Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to this edition, the 8th edition of Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe. Hi, my name's Joe O'Connor, founder and CEO of the Transformer Company, and I like helping veterans, veteran business owners, and those who support veterans become bigger, better, and even bolder versions of themselves. And I do this in 3 key areas: health, wealth, and mindset. So the purpose of this podcast is to enlighten you into various aspects of what I find interesting, and I'm sure you will too. First of all, it's split into 3 parts because, and I do believe this is a unique aspect of this podcast, because the 3 parts is the week that was, then the middle section, which is standing on the shoulder of giants, because if you agree with me, then you recognise that the people we come into contact with in the past, and in fact the present, have sculptured, formed our lives and our knowledge. And I get to speak with some magnificent people who I class as giants in their field, specialism or sector. And they share their story and journey with me so you can benefit from that. A lot of them are veterans, some of them are not veterans. The thing is, they support veterans. And then we finish off with my tips on health, wealth, mindset. And I've changed it up slightly because now I look at one particular aspect each podcast. And I put my 35 years in business and 15 years in the military to good practice to share with you what I've learned during that period. So we start off with the week that was, and I'm sure you'll remember, right, that what I said I was doing in the future was changing it up a little bit, because that was after a soul-searching period with me looking at how reporting on all of the news from the previous week was affecting me. And of course, Fergal Keane brought that home when he shared with viewers nationwide, in fact internationally, that when he'd been reporting on conflict areas and wars over the last 30 years, it had had an effect on him. And I found that this was happening similarly. Even only reporting on the news for 6, 7, 8 weeks, and plus all the research I'd done, then it was affecting me too. So what I've decided to do is just look at a couple of news items from the week that was, i.e. the previous week, between the 14th and the 21st of May 2022. And I've picked out one thing that has stunned me slightly, because how can you be stunned slightly? Anyway, it's made me think, because on Tuesday the 17th of May there was a football match, Sheffield United against Nottingham Forest, and there were riots on the pitch after the football match finished. It was a penalty shootout, and thousands, or if not thousands, definitely hundreds of supporters stormed onto the pitch. One supporter in particular, Robert Biggs, took it upon himself to make a beeline for the Sheffield United captain, who hadn't actually played in the game, I'm not sure, or certainly at the end of the game, and just headbutted him. Now, I'm not sure what the motive was, and I don't suppose we'll ever know, because only Robert Biggs will know what that is. The fact is, though, that remember I did a video blog some time ago about my experience when I owned a nightclub, and I commented that when you mix alcohol with any sane person, and sometimes even an idiot, you get a maniac, because the alcohol induces behaviour that wouldn't normally be experienced by a person, right? And in particular, it can affect people in a really bad way. Some people get really happy, others get aggressive, and some others just fall asleep. It would appear that Robert Biggs, on this occasion, became aggressive. And he was fined by the magistrate £500. There was £500 compensation for Billy Sharp, the captain, and then there was £85 costs and £128 for the victim surcharge. Now, he also got a prison sentence, which was, I think, 26 weeks or something like that. And his defence argued that his partner and himself may not be able to pay the mortgage if he went to prison. Now, the fact is that sometimes and quite often you are the victim of your own behaviour and your own circumstances. And I think that the judge wanted to send out a message, a clear message to people not to take this sort of behaviour with alcohol because it wouldn't be acceptable. And I was listening to Professor Clifford Stott, he's the social psychology department at Keele University. And he was saying that there's a lack of evidence-based solutions, so they're not sure how to deal with this. Well, my evidence, based on what I know, without doing evidence-based on spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds, finding out what caused it. Quite simply, in my opinion, it's the herd mentality, because Robert Biggs did actually say that he just followed the crowd. So that's the herd mentality. And also, when I was chatting to a veteran recently, we were looking at and examining the lack of respect that there seems to be in society now, which may be a cultural change, maybe a discipline change, because there also seems to be a lack of discipline also. And then we moved on to the fact of, well, what can we do about this? And we touched on the fact on the solution of, should we bring national service back? My friend was quite supportive of this, and I wonder what you think. Do you think we should bring back national service? It'd be great to hear what you say. I mean, I know that when I was teaching people skill at arms and teaching them how to fire a semi-automatic weapon and an automatic weapon, I wouldn't like to think that they'd just been brought off the street for national service. So maybe we could do some sort of citizen service first and then decide whether they want to join the military afterwards. So I'd like to hear what you think. And then linking national service and military service, something is starting this week between the 21st and 28th of May, because it's the National War Graves period, where we respect those who gave their lives in the First World War, especially. They're the National War Graves around Europe. And the bravery of those people, I mean, maybe we sometimes forget just how much we owe to the international community, the Indians, the Commonwealth, all around the world, who came to our support and supported the Brits, the British during that terrible war. They call it the Great War. I'm not sure what was so great about it, actually. And what I do know is, linking back to the football riots, and violence doesn't pay, really, in any sort of scenario. And this National War Graves Week allows us to recognise and pay respect to the members of the armed forces and civilians who died during the military campaigns or operations. And I've visited the war graves, and it's just phenomenal how they're kept in such good order. And the purpose of this week is to provide an annual awareness of the massive bravery that was given, and to discover the World Heritage on the doorstep. So if you get the chance, visit the War Graves website. because I'm sure you'll find you'll be absolutely amazed at the ordinary people that did extraordinary things. So that's my take on the week that was, and I'd just like to reflect on the fact that violence doesn't pay in any way, shape or form, and it's much better to be peaceful and have a brilliant day. And coming up next is the second part of the podcast, which of course is Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the reason I thought that it'd be interesting to put this section in is because through my years on this planet, I've met some absolutely amazing people. And my job for you is to bring them to your home, to your smart device, whatever you listen to this podcast on, and just welcome them so they can share their knowledge, wisdom and skills with you to help make you an even better person in life and business. Thank you, and we'll move on to Standing on the Shoulder of Giants now. How effective do you think being a member of a network, of a group of like-minded people could be for you and your business? Well, that's exactly the reason why I founded the Transformer Business Network Group. And we meet every 2 weeks. A bunch of like-minded people, and the organisation started just after the start of the pandemic. And we've been going for over 2 years now, and my aim, mission in life is to help guide, support business owners who are just like you get bigger, better results in business. And we do this by creating a group that's unique, simple and effective, and supporting veteran business owners and those who support veterans. If you fit into that category, then this is a great fit for you, and we'd like to hear from you. So if you follow the link now, and you can find out how to join us for a session to find out what it's all about. But until we meet, thank you and have a brilliant day. Hi, and here we are for another edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants section in the Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe. Today I've got a great guy with me, absolute legend in what he does. It's fantastic, and I can see you smiling there because I know you're a modest guy. Gavin Watson, you run the Military Veterans podcast, and I've learned all about it, and we've had a good chat. I think it's amazing. Just tell me a little bit about that, please, and what inspired you to do it.
Yeah, no problem. So it is called Military Veterans Podcast, and it's a chance of veterans to come on the show and share their journey before, during and after service, giving everybody the opportunity to have a light shone on top of them, I guess, to go through what they've gone through or share what they've gone through. Why I've done it is to give people that don't have that opportunity to maybe write a book, or if they don't have an amazing medal or something like that, get interviewed by the big press, but to have that opportunity for their friends and family to hear what they've gone through. That's one of the main reasons. That's
good, because there are a lot of unsung heroes out there, aren't there? And maybe what they've done isn't as celebrity status as others, but nevertheless, I mean, they've done a great deal, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think anybody that's gone through the military or even tried to go into the military, you kind of just that first step is quite big in itself, but then to get through training and then even to stay in for years is impressive, So.
Yeah. Well, fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what I want to do is during this session is just get a little bit more of an understanding of what makes you tick. Mm-hmm. And I suppose the first thing is, it always interests me of what's behind the reason, the purpose of why someone would join the military. Yeah. So what inspired you, prompted you to join the military?
Yeah, well, my dad was actually in, so he was in the Blues and Royals in London.
Ah, right,
so
okay.
That's the beginning of, I guess, where I was brought up. And then I personally joined the Army Cadets when I was a teenager, and really, really enjoyed it. And I was also a really good shot, so I went and did a lot of shooting competitions. And then I just thought, why not do it for a real job? Always had that inkling to join. So I ended up joining at 16, straight from school.
Wow, fabulous. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is my recollection of the Blues and Royals. They're really connected, the cavalry part of the engineers, there was a big connection between the Royal Engineers and the Blue.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I remember having a chat with someone many, many years ago, and they were, I can't remember the exact detail, but they were saying that there was a big connection. So isn't that a coincidence?
It could be a very big coincidence, because I think I also remember, and again it could have changed, many years have passed since, but I remember that the Blues and Royals used to have a tank part to them, I think, as well as the ceremonial aspect.
Yeah.
Maybe it's linked to the military and the engineers that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, the engineers build bridges for tanks, so there is a connection anyway.
Indeed.
So tell me a little bit about your military career then. What did you experience? What did you learn? What skills did you gather?
Okay, so I joined the Royal Engineers, and I specialised as a driver. But during my driver's career, I guess, I actually became a crane operator. So a crane op spec, as we would say.
And what a great bunch of guys you are. We always loved it when a crane turned up, because that made our job so much easier.
Exactly. But did all the normal engineering stuff, building bridges, blowing them up, which is always good fun. Yeah. And during my time, I did a really good period of time of tours. So I actually ended up going to Afghanistan way back in 2002. Right, and that was before the Herrick that everybody knows about today. That was actually called Op Fingal, so way before Herrick. And that was an eye-opener, and we actually did kind of 3 months of engineering, so rebuilding the schools and orphanages and roads and stuff like that. Well, not so much roads, but VCPs, vehicle checkpoints. Yeah. So we were building Dragon Teeth and stuff like that. And then we actually re-rolled a little bit, and we actually did infantry stuff. So I experienced being an infantry, really, doing foot patrols and vehicle patrols, which was really interesting, and working with a lot of different nationalities. And then subsequent years beyond that, I did 2 tours of Iraq, and then also was trying my best to become an army diver. So there was a lot of stuff inside of me that wanted to drive and be as good as I could be. Yeah. And army diver, special tool for the Royal Engineers.
Yeah, I know that.
That's probably my proudest moment, actually. So there's the first course is known as a Diver Aptitude Week, a really difficult week. 21 people started my course and 5 finished. So to be one of those 5, I felt really, really proud, and I felt a bit of a rock star when I went back to camp, because there was a PTI, a physical training instructor, that was on it with me. And during one of the physical tasks we were given, he gave up. He gave up and walked off. He was like, F this, I'm not doing this anymore. You lot of this, that and the other. So he went back to camp about 4 days before me and got ridiculed, and I got back and I was like a god. It was great.
Yeah, wow.
And then moving forward, I then went on to the second course, damaged my Achilles halfway through, went back, tried to get rehab and get sorted. But then I went to Iraq, and whilst out there I actually got a bit injured with my hips. But that's it in a nutshell. But that was 16 years I actually served for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know, and it's pretty much like any military guy being male or female, you tell the story just in such a matter-of-fact way.
Very true, yeah.
And I know, and you're listening now, if you're a veteran, you pretty much have got the calibre of this guy. And if you're not ex-military, well then believe me when I say, because I did the diver's aptitude, and I did get through to the end, and I was a PTI. So I knew I had to pass that course, that diver's aptitude, because I didn't want to go back to camp with a big fat Freddy, because that wouldn't have been any good. And then obviously Afghan You served there, and then you would have had 2 tours. Two tours of Iraq. We don't need to go into the big detail on that necessarily, unless you want to, because I know that there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and there would have been some testing times for you. What was the biggest lesson that you gathered from your military career, do you think?
From the whole of the military career?
Yeah. Anything in particular that you can identify, if not generally speaking?
Yeah. I'd say, for me, it's probably how to cope with pressure. I suppose when a lot of things are going down, we're quite good at maybe taking a step back and actually just trying to put into perspective what needs to be done first.
Yeah.
So maybe prioritising things.
Yeah.
And during my career, I did get to the rank of sergeant, so I did the relevant courses that you do when you do the commander aspect of the military. So that was probably the biggest thing I took away from the military is that aspect, and maybe not crumbling under pressure when it can get a bit heated.
Yeah. Was that your field sergeant's course at Jib Barracks?
So I didn't actually get to do my field sergeant's before I got medically discharged.
Oh right, okay.
But I did the JCC.
Oh right, well that's a tough cookie to get over. Yeah, I know. So, and it's interesting you did the infantry role as well, because many don't realise that the engineers, our first part of military training is as an infantry soldier. We only specialise on the second part because obviously they're testing whether we're good enough to be a soldier first.
Yeah.
Then we move on to the engineers. So that's interesting that you were in an infantry role for the period.
From my experience and from what I remember being told, it's a very rare thing that a squadron or a regiment of engineers to get re-rolled into anything other than engineering.
Yeah.
Because we've got such a great British military as a whole. But it was because Iraq was about to kick off. So they were literally taking all of the infantry and getting them ready to head out to Kuwait and sort out Iraq. So that's why we re-rolled. And we had some reservists, or back then it was TA units that came and supported us. But we were the main part that was organising.
Right, so we were pretty stretched at that time.
We were, because we were in Kabul, so that was the capital of Afghan. Yeah. We were pretty stretched as a military even back then. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service. Thank you so much. What challenges, moving now from your military career, what sort of challenges did you face when transitioning? Because I know that. Because I know a little bit about what went on and why you did leave the military. What was your biggest challenge?
Well, I think it's worth me sharing why I got.
Exactly.
That brings its own challenges into itself. Earlier on, I mentioned about trying to get stronger and fitter, ready to go back on the divers course after damaging my Achilles. And whilst I was in Iraq, I was doing a bit of running, as you do. And I was getting a bit of pain in my hips. So I went to the physio department out in Iraq and just asked for some stretches. Can you help me out? And they were a bit shocked with the lack of range of movement. So they actually took an x-ray. And then I had to go back a few days later. And then there was a naval surgeon and the head of physio there showing me these x-rays. And they said I had severe osteoarthritis. But I was 26, so it was really early to be having severe osteoarthritis in both sides of my pelvis. So they actually Kazivacked me out of Iraq, to get me back. So I could then go and have tests and other things to find out how severe it was and what we could do next. So after they did the tests and stuff, I actually wanted to go back to Iraq. So I did. I went back, finished my tour, and long and short of that, I spent the next 4 years having 5 hip surgeries, hip operations, and 2 of those were replacements. All of this to try and keep me in because I really wanted to be an army diver. So, they also told me that the hips that they would put in me, they've had special forces guys have them and they've been back out in the field. So I was like, yeah, sweet. I love those.
Okay, yeah.
I love those. But I wasn't successful, and they ended up medically discharging me. So when I was looking at civilian life and what could I do out in the real world, I had to make a decision. I couldn't become a crane operator because, if anybody has had any experience with plant equipment, it's heavy duty. There's a lot of stuff you've got to lift up and put down. And if I were to, twist accidentally the wrong way, then I could be out for a while. And I think as a civilian job, you can't be out for a while.
No.
So I couldn't do my crane stuff. I also couldn't sit down for a long time, which meant I couldn't really become a driver. So even though I had all my C+C and truck stuff, I couldn't really do that for hours on end. So I ended up becoming an IT geek. I won't say the company that I worked for, but I went and became a bit of a geek, which I was in the army anyway. And that gave me balance and perspective with, I guess, a hobby or interest of mine being technology, but also being able to teach others. So I'm actually a trainer, a teacher within the IT aspect.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't well paid, but I knew I would want to wake up every day and go and do that. So that was the kind of juggling part in my head. Do I go and do a job that I'm actually probably going to hate and gets paid as much as a sergeant, or do I go and do a job that doesn't get paid as much but I'll probably enjoy because I'm a real geek in this area, and I'll enjoy helping others, and so that's what I went for. So that was a challenge in itself, going for a job and having an interview for the first time, because I've never had an interview, right? When you go and sign up for the military, you technically do have interviews, but it's not the same as going for a corporate job or whatever. So that was my first interview, and I've never written a CV either. So those were the biggest two challenges, which you kind of need when you're going for any job, right?
And how did that make you feel at the time?
Scared and nervous, really, because if I hadn't got that job, my time was running out. And so I just did what I could. But I think because I was going for something that I love and enjoy, that came across, I think, in the interview. And so, they hired me, which was great. But the military try their best to give you that CV experience and the interview experience, but it can be really difficult to get your head around it. Yeah,
that's with the course that you do just at the end of your military career. Is that what you're talking about?
That's right,
and it is, I always say, it's interesting when you're a civilian going into the military, the amount of training they give you and spend on you to make you a good soldier. Mm-hmm. And then when you're coming out on civvy street, in comparison, it's a few quid.
Yeah.
It's whatever fell down the back of the settee. That's what we're giving to prepare you for civvy street.
Yeah.
And
here's some paperwork.
So from that, and again, you handle it in such a matter-of-fact way, because I know from that brief resume on getting out of the military, there was massive problems from your physical ability. There was significant issues with maybe knowing how to do an interview, go through the process and complete a CV that actually reflects your skills, wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
And then there was other stuff going on as well in the background with relationships or what the future was holding. So what's the secret to your success then?
I think definitely any military person, you don't really harp yourself as being successful. But I think just trying to keep my feet on the ground and knowing what the next step could be. So not trying to think too far ahead, but also having goals, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And making it realistic, because there was no way I was going to become a CEO of a company, nor would I want to, because it sounds quite stressful. But also, I've learned from it. So even though you might say it's a success because, I've got a civvy job and I've got a roof over my head, I would also say I shouldn't have gone in so low in the company, if that makes sense. I definitely had more experience that I should have showcased.
Yeah.
And my abilities were definitely more than I gave credit to. So I would say I learnt from that, and I'm in a better place now. But you definitely should realise how much you've got to give to civil industry.
And we're going to come on to that in more detail. But the fact is that you've addressed it now is fabulous, because that's what this relaxed style podcast is about. It's about bringing out your observations from how our conversation goes. So just tell me a little bit more about that, because that really interests me. I find that a lot of military guys tend to have a modest base for how they view their ability, and so when you went into this first job, did it become, or how quickly was it before it became apparent that your skills were a bit better than what you thought they were, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and I think not to be too big-headed, but pretty quickly. I think because when you're in the military, you're surrounded by black and white uniformity, orders, Part 1 orders that are on the wall, you know where to be and what time. And you're always early, right? 5 minutes before or 5 minutes before. And, when you go to civilian life and maybe people in there are 100% civilianized, there's a little bit more relaxed, wishy-washy time of, well, I'm going to be a bit late. Well, you can't be late. What do you mean you're late? I did find pretty quick that the position I'd gone in for made sense of why they snapped me up so quick. We'll take you. When I should have gone in a bit higher. But it's pretty quick came to understand that.
And because they recognise your ability, were you rewarded in promotion or whatever guise they gave you?
Yeah. They gave me guidance of where I wanted to go. They gave me guidance on the route I could take. So I guess it just became what I wanted. No instant promotion or anything like that. It took me a few years to get there. But I'm in a position now where, I'm definitely where I should have been, maybe from the start.
That's brilliant. So it's clear that there is a progression, and which is absolutely fabulous. So something that I've recognised in most of ex-military is the ability to deal with failure and recognise. How do you deal with failure?
How do I deal with failure? Probably sulk and cry for a first little bit, and then I think it depends on what the failure is. So with my hips and stuff, that essentially in my head was failure in the military, because I had a whole career planned out and wanted to get certain places like the Army Diver. But I think for me, it's finding new goals and new challenges to drag you away from that failure, whether that's in the same ballpark or a completely different direction. So that's how I guess deal with failure, is I look for the next best thing.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because then there's all sorts of conditions in your environment, in your physiology, your physicality, in my opinion anyway, that helps you get through failure, from what I've recognised. So how important was it for you to have a strong social network or business network, i.e. being the people that you work with? And business meaning when, for instance, you were recovering from your hip operations, I would class the business as the business was being in the military then, the guys that you were with. So how important did you find that was to your recovery and dealing with failure generally?
Well, I'd say having a good, strong network around you is probably more key when you have failure, or when you do require recovery, be that physically or mentally. But sometimes you don't appreciate what you've got around you until it's maybe too late. until you really require it. So for me, when I had my hips done, being in the military still was a real benefit, and also I had the likes of Headley Court, so the big rehabilitation place, and having others with similar injuries around me was huge. It was a massive benefit. But then when I got out, and I actually went through a bit of a terrible phase, and sadly got diagnosed with PTSD when I had a stupid flashback, which is so scary and surreal for anyone that's experienced it. It's just, scary, regardless of how butch manly you are. A proper flashback will bring you back down to earth. But at that time, I was alone. I was living at home on my own with my dog. My dog's got me through so much. But I was alone, and the only thing I could do was reach out to the likes of military charities. That was my network, was to reach out and say, I don't know what to do. So I think it's kind of maybe getting to the point of swallowing your pride and actually saying you need help. That's probably a real key thing to take away. Yeah,
because I don't know about you, if you're anything like me, because you lived in the same environment, being in the military. I always found that when I had a problem, it was not a problem as soon as I told someone else, because a problem shared is a problem halved, and by the time you'd shared the problem with someone, it was all around the troop or the section. Yeah. Everyone knew. They'd come and put their arm around you and have a good laugh about it if it was appropriate, and then just get you a bit G'd up. So I can understand where you go from that position to being in a room alone, apart from the dog, which was a big support, as you say.
Yeah.
Then things could have been tough, even tougher. So you mentioned Headley Court and then the charities that you got involved with and phone them. So that brings me on to the next question of a coach or mentor. How important do you think having a great coach or mentor is to your, and generally to anyone's ability to recover?
Well, I think that comes in many forms. So that can be a close friend, a partner, maybe mum or dad. Do you know what I mean? It can be that kind of person as a coach or mentor. But even in the workplace, having that manager or someone in a slightly higher position, or even the same position as you, to give you guidance of what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. And I you know, for me personally, the one person that I've always been able to ring up when things have got really bad is my mum, but she doesn't live in the country, so she's over in America. So I'm kind of used to that, right? When you're in the military, you're never at home, right?
Yeah.
You're always kind of an email or a phone call away from your family. So I'm used to that. That hasn't changed. And then in work life, I wouldn't be where I am without a manager that has supported me so much to give me that confidence to know that I could go for that next position. So having the people around you realizing and recognizing who they could be is vital and really, really key to know where you're going to go next. Because if you're not striving to go forward, then you're just stagnating.
That's interesting. And from, I mean, the podcast you do now, I mean, I know you've told me that, and we've discussed the reason behind it. And I think it's a great that you're able to help showcase people that otherwise wouldn't get any coverage for the things that they do, the brilliant things that they do. So how does doing that affect you? What influence does it have on your positive outlook on life? How does that help you?
For me, the connection with the veterans is huge. Like, for example, you and I, Joe, would never have crossed paths.
No, that's right.
If it wasn't for the podcast. And everybody that's been on my show so far, well, there is a chunk that I know. There's a chunk of friends that I invited on, but there's also people from America, for example, that I would never have crossed paths. And I've learned so much, and also learning that what they've gone through and how they've kind of gone over their failures, if you want to call it failures, or their difficulties, has really showcased and given others power and strength. And that can be other veterans, that can be other people in the military, or that can be civilians that are learning from veterans. So that gives me power, that gives me energy, and drives me forward to get the next veteran on to get their stories out there.
I know that you go to a great deal of, is inconvenience the right word? You put an awful lot of effort in to interviewing each of your veterans, because you travel to them personally, don't you? Wherever they are in the country. Yeah,
so if they're within the UK, I will do my utmost to drive to their home.
Yeah, because you've travelled all the way up for today.
Yeah.
Because I know we're going to be looking at your podcast, because then I'm going to be a guest on your. Yeah, so
right.
Which I'm honoured and privileged to be.
Yeah.
And so it's great that you do that, and I think that the impact that you're having on the veteran community is fabulous.
Well, thank you, and I hope that it gains more traction with its impact. But I think being in person is much easier to bounce off each other's energy, right? And if I can do that within the UK, I'll do my best. I'm based down in Kent.
Yeah.
So anywhere in the UK is a drive.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So I've driven to North Wales, South Wales. We're up here. Near Liverpool now. I've driven to Ripon, so I've driven all over the country. And then for people that aren't in the UK, I do a thing called remote recording, where we utilise essentially a computer, which everybody's used to from what we've all gone through with Zoom and stuff like that. But so if there's any veterans over in America, then they're done remotely through the computer, to try and give the same kind of feel that we can within the UK. But so that's why I wanted to do what's called a portable podcast, rather than having one studio where veterans may struggle to come up or come down the country, and hopefully they feel more safe and content in their own location, and inviting me and the podcast equipment into their home.
And what's the best way to get in touch with you? Because I'll put something on the podcast where they can contact you as well. But what's the best way for them to get in touch?
So you can reach out through any social media apart from Facebook. Don't get on with that. But any other social media, if you just search for Military Veterans Podcast, or you can actually, that's also on YouTube as well, or you can type in milvetpodcast.com, and that is the main website, and you can see all of the episodes, but also there's a contact list that you can send me a message, and I'll get back to you once I can. But
fabulous. And it starts milvetpodcast.com.
Yep.
Brilliant.
You can type in Military Veterans Podcast as well, because
I've
got that as well, but MILVET podcast.com is just easier to type.
The shorthand version is better, So we were talking before, and you went into some detail about how the transition from the military, and then you openly admitted you weren't really aware of how valuable your skills were in your first job, and you probably could have gone up a few notches on the job spec that you went for. So how valuable and how transferable do you think the skills are that we gain in the military? Because I know that I was the same as you, and maybe I didn't recognise just how good, I suppose, how good my skills were until I was in a workplace in civilian life. So how transferable do you think the skills are that you gained?
I think they're all transferable. Even if you were to go to the likes of, the extreme of bomb disposal, right?
Yeah.
If you were to whittle down what that skill is, that's working under pressure, that's time management essentially, right? You've got time management. It's working steady with your hands. So it's just breaking down what you've learned from that area. Even crane operator, right?
Yeah.
Crane operator is maths and angles and just so many other areas. Spatial awareness, making sure everything's safe, and all that kind of stuff. It's just breaking it down, which we sadly don't get taught. Like you say, when we leave, we just get a 5-minute, is what you got to do, here's some paperwork. But in fact, if you spent some time with somebody and broke down everything that you've learned, even the commander aspect, the commandship of being a corporal, lance corporal, or even a sergeant, there's so much you've ascertained from being in the military that the civilian street will love it.
And I know you touched, there was a touch of modesty there again, because even a crane operator, right, I know I was always pleased to see a crane op, especially when we were doing HGOB, heavy girder overbridge, or an MGOB, because if we had a crane, it made it dead easy. And when we were doing a Bailey bridge, you know, lugging that around 4 blokes or maybe 6 blokes, it's a lot easier with a crane.
Yeah, massively, right? And time as well, right? So much quicker. And you know, that course is difficult, I suppose. But you know, you've got to have that skill. You've got to have that mindset of being able to calculate things and you know, setting it up correctly as well. Definitely, and I think so. That's really great that you've touched on that, because and analysing what you said were like the training staff who were saying, here's a pamphlet or here's a bit that get in Civvy Street. Perhaps wouldn't it be great, right, if they'd left the military and then rejoined as the instructors telling you how to be a civvy? Yeah. Because they would know then how important your skills were, but because they're in the same boat, it's a bit like blind leading the blind, isn't it? Because they don't know how valuable your skills are either. Yeah. So that might, hey, make a note of that. You could perhaps send a letter to the Chief Royal Engineer and maybe give him some influence. So, what's the one thing, because from all of that we put together, what's the one thing or the one tip that you would give to someone leaving the military or someone who's already left the military, a veteran, on how to become successful or even more successful than they already are? I'd probably say don't put limits on yourself. I think whatever you've gone through, however long you've been in the military or however long you've been a veteran, you've probably got more to give than you give yourself credit for. So my advice would be, if you've got a thought or an idea in your head or a role that you want to achieve, then go for it. And if you're already doing that role, how can you help others come to your level? You know, give forward, pay it forward and give back. So my advice would be, just be happy. If you're not happy, change it. If you can't change it, then ask for some support from others to make you happy, because we're only here once, aren't we? So yeah, it's not a dress rehearsal, is it? Well, listen, Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure we'll meet again and do something like this again, because I'd love to keep in touch, which I know we will. Yeah. And as a fellow sapper as well, and I love your shirt with the veteran underneath. I've got to get me one of them. Yeah. So for anybody that's just listening, I've got a Royal Engineer cap badge. Underneath is the word veteran. So, ordered it myself. That's very good. Gavin, thank you so much. No problem. All right, cheers. Your success matters. This is something I truly believe in, that your success matters, and that's what I always tell my clients. And I think it's all about changing your life, and what I did is I put my mind to this. I wanted to see and think about how best I could get a success message across to people just like you to help you get better results. And some time ago I came up with a think you can, know you can, because I think as you transform your life, once you've got to get the idea, you've got to think that you can. And with enough practice, you get to know you can too, if that makes sense. Do you get my drift? So, what I did is I wrote this book, Think You Can, Know You Can, and you can get a copy for absolutely free. No obligation.
All you got to do is scan the QR code. It'll take you to the page where you can get your copy today, and it's my gift to you because I want to help you appreciate that your success matters and you can change your own life now by getting a copy of this book. Thank you and have a brilliant day. What a fantastic interview with another giant on standing on the shoulder of giants. And now we move on to the Transformer Health, Wealth and Mindset section. And you'll remember that this is where I give tips from my experience and also I glean information from other people. And today we're looking at, in particular, some wealth tips. Now, what I've been doing is looking at what's going on in business and what sort of government grants are available. So I thought I'd just run through something that has recently been released by the government to help SMEs, that's small, medium enterprises, to get better cash flow so things are easier for them. So I'm just going to run through some 5 top tips of ways that you, if you have an SME, a small, medium-sized enterprise, can save money and help your cash flow. So you can, number 1 is you can claim up to £5,000 with the employment allowance. The employment allowance is a tax relief which allows eligible businesses to reduce their national insurance contributions, known as NICs. And you can claim this if you're a business and your employer Class 1 national insurance liabilities were less than £100,000 in the previous tax year. This will benefit around 50,000 businesses who will be taken out of paying NICs and the health social security level entirely. Wow, so how great is that? What an advantage. Top tip number 2 is get a discount of up to £5,000 on software. This is via the Help to Grow Digital and is a UK-wide government-backed scheme that aims to help you choose, buy and adopt digital technologies that will help you grow your business. To be eligible, businesses can receive a 50% discount on buying new software worth up to £5,000 per SME, alongside free impartial advice and guidance about what digital technology is best suited to boost your business performance. The Help to Grow management scheme provides small businesses with access to world-class business expertise on everything from leadership and financial management to marketing and digital adoption. This is delivered through UK's leading business schools alongside one-on-one support from a business mentor and is 90% funded by the government. So I'm sure you'll agree that it is a fantastic opportunity to get your digital presence up to speed. And by the end of the programme, you will develop a business growth plan to help you lead and grow your businesses. To be eligible, you must be a UK-based small, medium-sized enterprise actively trading for at least 1 year and have a total of between 5 and 249 employees. For more information and to apply, visit the Help to Grow on the government.uk website. Top tip number 3. This is a great one as well. Get up to half of your business rates paid for or reduced from April this year. That's 2022. Small retail, hospitality and leisure businesses can benefit from a 50% off their business rates bills. This is worth a massive 1.7 billion for up to 400,000 eligible properties. The business rates multiplier has also been frozen for another year, saving businesses an additional £4.6 billion over the next 5 years. This is used to calculate how much business rates you should pay, and it usually rises with inflation each year. The business rates multipliers for 2022-23 are 49.9 pence for the small business multiplier and 51.2 pence for the standard multiplier. From April 2022, there will be no business rates due. That's no business rates due on a range of green technology, including solar panels and batteries, whilst eligible heat networks will also receive 100% relief. Together, these will save businesses around £200 million over the next 5 years. And top tip number 4, invest in your business with super deduction and annual investment allowance. To spur business investment, the super deduction allows companies to cut their tax bill by 25 pence for every pound they invest in a qualifying machinery and equipment. This can include the purchases of computers, most commercial vehicles and office furniture. The temporary £1 million limit for the annual investment allowance has also been extended to the end of March 2023. This had been due to revert back to £200,000 at the start of 2022. The annual investment allowance allows businesses to spend up to £1 million on qualifying business equipment and deduct in year its full cost before they calculate their taxable profits. Both of these tax breaks remain available for firms to take advantage of until the end of March 2023 by incurring qualifying expenditure before then. And number 5 is a benefit from the cut in fuel duty. The government has cut fuel duty on petrol and diesel by 5 pence per litre for 12 months. This is effective from the 23rd of March 2022, and this cut plus the freeze in the fuel duty in 2022 to 2023 represents a £5 billion saving worth around £200 for the average van driver and £1,500 for the average haulier. To find out what other support may be available for you and your business, search business support on gov.uk. So they're my top tips for you on the 5 top tips on how you may be eligible to save money. And that brings me to the end of the wealth section of this podcast today. And I just want to move on. Remember, of course, that in the Transformer business, there are lots of ways I want to help you. We can help you with the Transformer Business Network, the Pathfinder Journal, and the Mastermind and Beyond. And the reason I put this together, this unique brand, is because I wanted to bring together in one place the knowledge, skills and wisdom I've learned over 35 years in business and 15 years in the military. And I can tell you, I've made some cracking mistakes during that time. And why I put this together is so you do not need to make the mistakes yourself. Of course, I get it. Some people do like to make their own mistakes. If you're anything like me, I like to be able to stand on the shoulder of giants and learn from other people's mistakes so I don't need to make the same. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Fabulous. So, keep in touch, and until we meet again, this is Joe O'Connor signing off with Pull Off a Sandbag with Joe, and have a brilliant day. Thank you.